Good morning. I'm Reverend Lyon, your minister here at Heritage Universalist Unitarian Church. You know, much of life is lived between the chapters, between what has been and what has not yet begun. So today we're going to make room for that space, for whatever questions we may be carrying into it. And I think there's someone who'd like to welcome you more officially.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm that someone. My name is Kathy Wade, and it is my privilege as your worship associate today to welcome one and all to Heritage Universalist Unitarian Church. This morning, we may feel ourselves in between, as the theme of today's service suggests. This may be especially true as we spring forward and become aware of the change in the seasons and, we hope, the promise of spring. Heritage is a community which welcomes all, regardless of race or creed, age or gender, life experience or beliefs. What we do have in common is the overriding spirit of love for one another, no matter the threshold we may stand in. Whether you're here in the sanctuary or joining us via Zoom, we always welcome our Zoomers, or you may be watching the service in the future as it becomes available on our website. We're very glad you're here. And if this is your first time, we're especially glad to have you. Please fill out a name tag and sign our guest book in the lobby if you have not already done that. And then you can connect with our greeter from the Board of Trustees, who is Susan Conley. Where are you, Susan? There she is, right in front. And Susan would be happy to talk with you more after the service and give you a tour if you like. And just a reminder to those of you here in person, please set your phones to airplane mode, or you can turn off if that's easier, since the signal can interfere with our internet system and may distract us. If you haven't already, you may want to take a look at the reverse side of your order of service. It's got a new look. You'll notice the new 2-column layout for our announcements, and we thank Martha for doing that. And make sure you are on the email list to receive the weekly connection each Monday to keep up with many things happening here at Heritage. Reverend Bill?
That's right, there's a lot going on. In fact, there was a big week for Heritage this week.
That's right. I can't find my script here. He moved it.
I did, I moved it.
There were a lot of folks here yesterday and the day before at our yard sale, our rummage sale. And I thought Barbara Rohr and her team did an amazing job.
That Barbara Rohr?
Yeah. And so I'm going to ask, was it successful? Did we make any money?
Well, it was successful on many counts. Yeah, we made money, but we also made friends. Turned out that 13 people that we'd never met, 23 people we'd never met, signed up and said they want to know more about our church. And we found new homes for a lot of wonderful stuff. Because if you were here before, you know how crowded this place was. It's all gone to new homes, which is wonderful. And I think we did make some money. Barb, do you have an amount there? Come on up.
Drum roll.
Yeah, drum roll, please.
Couldn't have done it without you. My goal was $6,000. We fell $7 short. No, we did $6,000.
That is just wonderful. Forrest and I were very happy to see that everything that we brought to give away got sold. We're making a difference in the community other ways, aren't we?
Yeah, because this Tuesday evening, we're hosting a community-wide event sponsored by Greater Anderson Promotes Peace and the Anderson Churches for Racial Unity. The workshop will help us learn to communicate better across divisions. We could all use that. And for those not already involved in the Democracy Action Team, they're hosting times before the service next week and the week after to help you find out how to very simply, very easily engage in issues that are important to all of us.
And how about today? Isn't there a potluck after church today? Or is it a town hall?
Yes. And yes.
Yes.
After worship, we'll gather for a potluck and a town hall conversation will be very different from any you've probably attended before. The board's going to share some of their emerging priorities for the coming season of our life together, and we'll spend time in conversation around those tables. So it's not a business meeting or vote, it's a listening chance. And if you're able to stay, consider sitting with some folks maybe you don't know. Or if you came without children, consider sitting at one of the tables that does have children at that table. I think you'll find the discussion fantastic. Whether you brought food or not, we hope you'll join us.
There's always enough. That sounds wonderful, doesn't it? That's all I have, Reverend Bill. Will you lead us in the call to worship?
I will. So let's settle just a bit from all that good news. And I think Shayla might be coming up right about now. It's always wonderful to have a volunteer chalice lighter. And that's what I had this morning when I walked in. We gather this morning at a threshold between what has ended and what has not yet begun, between certainty and discovery, between who we have been and who we are becoming. We do not rush the crossing. We stand here together, curious, courageous, unfinished. We light this chalice as a sign of patience, companionship, and trust in the in-between. So to get us started, I think we have one of our favorite hymns, Blue Boat Home. I invite you to stand as you're willing and able, and then remain standing for our covenant.
please remain standing to recite our covenant. By this covenant, we affirm that
There we go. Now it works. Okay. I would like to invite all of our young people forward for the time for all ages. Come on. There we go. Yes, they sit in a line. Yeah. All right. Here we go. Good job. Do I have all of you? Yes? Okay. Here we go. Plop. All right. I do. I have a plant. What do I have? Can you see what I have? Okay. So, I have some little figures about some things that we see often in the world. Okay? What is this? Do we know what this is? It's a plant. Yes, sir. Yes. I decided not to use the frogs. We did. We went in search. I have figures for those of you who can't see. I have these little educational figures, and I initially wanted the frog. But then when I looked at the frog, I thought, the frog actually, well, I will explain. I will come back to the frog, okay? So, often when we think about transformations in nature, there are two things that we might think often of. Plants, right? And what are these? Okay. These are the famous end products of natural transformations, right? They're things that we see a lot, and they're gorgeous and beautiful, right? And part of what is so interesting about them is they start as something very different, right? What is this? Boop, boop. It's a caterpillar. Does the caterpillar and the butterfly look anything alike? Sort of in a way. There's both black involved, right? But they have... Yes. There are, some vague similarities, yes. But, they're very different, right? If I just saw this, if I didn't know what a butterfly was, and I just saw this out in the world, I would be like, oh, okay, that's a cool thing, right? I wouldn't be like, oh, one day it's going to be this thing. What? No. Okay? The same thing is also true of plants, right? Plants start as what? Seeds, right? And yes, seeds and trees are related, and we can tell it. But when you look outside at a tree, and then you look at this tiny, dormant-looking, crusty, brown, maybe dead, I don't know, seed thing, these things I don't think these things are the same, right? I know that they are related. We all know they're related. Yes, tiny and big, caterpillar and butterfly, what is going on? But one of the things I think that often doesn't get nearly as much attention is what happens in between. Because, the caterpillar doesn't just one day, oops, up and turn into the butterfly. We might think that, but it's not like it goes into a cocoon. Yes, it's not like one day, when you watch shows that have magic in it, right? It's sometimes, you're a frog, there's a cloud of mystical glitter, boom, you're a unicorn, right? That's not actually how the natural world works. There's not a cloud of mystical glitter that makes this happen, right? What happens is this. Now we call this a cocoon, which it is, a form of cocoon. It is called it has a term, it has an appropriate scientific term, which is pupa. Okay, and it looks like nothing is happening in here. We can't see inside. We don't know what's going on. We're like, oh, okay, that's just chill. They're just hanging out, chilling, relaxing. Great. But there is a lot of stuff happening in here that we don't see. I mean, literally, the caterpillar is changing from what it is into something very different. Yes. And that means like the shape of its body is changing, all the stuff, all the goop and goo of the inside of its body is changing into something else. There is a lot that is happening here that we can't even see. The same is true of the seed. Let me see the seed, right? The seed is going to do this thing. The seed under the ground, where we never see it, is going to do a whole lot of work, okay? It's going to absorb water and nutrients from around its environment. It's going to crack open. Parts of it are going to start to unfurl like fingers into the ground, and those little fingers are going to start to suck up stuff around it that it needs, and then it's going to start to do the work of becoming something very different. Now, we know this now because of science and because all of the ways of scientific observation helps us learn about things. But it actually teaches us something, right? That the most magnificent of transformations, the most amazing becomings, the work of becoming, going from like a tiny little seed to a big, massive tree, needs something. It needs time of changing and growing, and that mostly needs to happen without anyone watching, without anyone getting in the way or getting in the middle of the process. It needs its own time to become. We often don't like downtime, time that's quiet, time that's calm. We think nothing is happening, right? But even if we don't see things happening, things can happen without there being a flurry of activity. That learning how to be in the in-between, to be in a space where you're becoming, where you're not quite sure you are what you were or what you're going to be. This, incidentally, for those of you who are in middle school, is where you are exactly right now. Middle school is a time of becoming. You're not the kid in elementary school anymore. You are not yet a teenager in high school. Something is happening right now. You might not like it. You might not want to do it. That's okay. You will get through it. And the butterfly promises us that even in our time of being a pupa, something will happen on the back end that we might appreciate. Okay? Now, sometimes for the rest of us, it's harder to know when we are in this in-between space. Sometimes we have to try to find it, right? And that means we sometimes have to be patient with ourselves in times when we don't think a lot is going on. But you know what? Nature makes us a promise, right? That if we can give ourselves over to that in-between time, something glorious will happen if we let it. Okay? Yes? That is a promise from nature. All right, let's put those figures back in the box. Sonny, okay, while you put those back, I'm going to invite the congregation to help us leave with a blessing. Okay? So, congregation, repeat after me. Okay, let me think about how to start a sentence now. Excellent. All right, we're going to try that again, all right? As you all leave today, know that we see you. At your beginnings, and at your ends, and in your becomings. Amen. Will you take the basket? Thank you. Okay, kitchen. We're going to the kitchen.
Thank you, Lacey. I often tell Lacey that I learn something every Sunday from being a kid. We now move to candles of community, prayerfully, each Sunday. And we're invited to come to the altar and hold the mic and say our name and share a joy or a sorrow or a concern with one another. This ritual is an act of awareness that we are spiritually connected, that we are not alone, and that in prayer and sharing ourselves with one another, we can grow in love and compassion. Reverend Bill will light a candle for your intentions at the altar, symbolizing the light of love that we extend to one another. So we invite you to line up on the outside aisles of the sanctuary if you have a joy or sorrow to share, and say your name and, very briefly, let us know what is in your heart. And those on Zoom are invited to type their requests into the chat, and we'll read them aloud. Are there joys and sorrows among us?
And yet there are still joys and sorrows that we carry. There are still joys and sorrows, maybe even forming, that we haven't even figured out what they are yet as we live the in-between. I light this candle for them. Spirit of life, God of many names and of no name, in this quiet moment we gather all that has been named and all that remains unnamed, the waiting, the uncertainty, the thresholds we did not choose and the ones we did. May compassion hold these lives. May patience steady us in what feels unresolved. And may we be gentle with ourselves and with one another. We live these questions now in silence. Amen.
Good morning. I'm Erin Walczewski, and I'm here today to talk about sharing our abundance, which is our church's way of talking about the offering that we collect each week. And if you're new to our church or visiting us on Zoom, one of my favorite traditions of this church is that every week when we collect the offering, 100% of what we collect does not stay here inside the church. It goes outside of the church to a nonprofit, either locally or nationally, that connects with a timely event or with our message for today. And here, as we're talking about in between and living in the in-between, our recipient is one that we support about once a quarter called Found House, which is a local nonprofit that helps people and families who are experiencing homelessness. So last night, Luke and I went to a dinner party. It was one of the dinner parties that Heritage offers as part of the fundraising auction, where you buy a spot and you get to go to somebody else's house. So Steve and Meredith Meyer hosted a group of us, including some people who are here today, at their house. And we had a really great time. You know, it was exactly what you think a dinner party is. It's wine and cheese, and Steve had selected wines from around their travels in Spain and Portugal, and people were telling them we had dinner, and people were telling funny stories about work and kids going off to college, or young kids, or funny travel stories or work stories from when we were in our 20s, and we just had a really wonderful time at our friend's house last night. But I have to tell you that the whole time I was there, never once was I looking around the Myers house and thinking, I wonder if I can stay here tonight. I was never thinking, as I sat down on their couch and drank wine and shared stories, oh, this couch looks like maybe I could sleep here, and that rug looks like maybe somewhere my kids could stay. But for families that are experiencing homelessness, that's what it's like. everybody I know who's actually experienced homelessness says that the misconception of homelessness is that it's a yes or no proposition. But what that it's actually like is this feeling of in between, this feeling of transigence as you go from place to place, because sometimes you have a place to stay for a little bit of time, and sometimes your friend will let you stay on a couch or on a cot or in a spare bedroom for a little bit of time. But for people who are experiencing this, that's what they're having to deal with all the time. They're having to think, what's it going to be tomorrow? And do we have somebody who can take me and my child? Do we have somebody who can take me and my partner? And so that's something that they have to deal with all the time. So if you feel like the abundance in your life is like mine, that when I go to my friends' houses, I'm only enjoying great stories and thinking about the next dinner party and not thinking, I wonder if my family can stay here because I'm not really sure where the roof is going to be over our head next week or the week after that or the week after that, we invite you to share your abundance with our offering here. In the sanctuary, we'll be passing plates, and online, the link will be in Zoom.
Thank you so much for your generosity.
Hello, my name is Kevin Wallace. I'm a newer member here, and I have a short reading here from the Austrian mystic and poet Rainer Maria Rilke. It's an excerpt from the Letters to a Young Poet. Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms, and like books that are written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers, which cannot be given to you now, because you would not be able to live with them. And the point is to live with everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then, gradually, without noticing it, live your way into the answer.
Thank you, Kevin. Be patient. Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart. I'm not very good at that. Patience, I mean. And unsolved things, well, they seem to be just calling out to be solved, don't they? We live in a world that rewards answers, immediate answers. Do you remember way back when answers weren't at our fingertips? When you pondered a question, you asked it and you waited. Or maybe a response came by mail, now known as snail mail, weeks later, and somehow was more satisfying than the ping from a chatbot. Yeah, we want answers, we want resolution, we want to fix what feels broken. Maybe even we enjoy being the fixer. Anybody else? But Rilke suggests something different. Do not seek the answers which cannot be given to you now, because you would not be able to live them. Instead, live the questions now. And isn't that where most of life is actually lived? Not at the beginning and not at the end, but somewhere in the middle? And there are so many of those moments. The awkwardness of growing into something. Old enough for some things, but not others. You can ride these rides at Kings Island, but not these. Or young adulthood, of age, but still not fully formed into who we're becoming. Or a relationship that might get better or worse. Waiting to hear about a job or a test result or diagnosis. Having let go of one role but unsure what comes next. Or how about a season when the whole world seems to be holding its breath, when we don't know what the next month or the next week or the next news cycle will bring. Times are common life when the ground shifts beneath us and we aren't sure what's going to hold. Now, I think individually, these in-between seasons are not rare. They're very normal, just uncomfortable. In fact, you might be in one right now. So I invite you to silently to name your own in between. I am in between this and this. Go ahead. You don't have to tell anyone, but it matters that you know. And of course, knowing doesn't make it easy. If you're in one of those seasons, it may not feel holy at all. It may just feel inconvenient or frightening or exhausting or even stagnant, like wasted time. And yet, nature has this strange habit of doing some of its most dramatic work out of sight. Lacey and the kids just taught us that, didn't they? Inside a chrysalis, that pupa for the caterpillar doesn't just automatically grow wings with the pixie dust. Much of its old structure breaks down. Cells reorganize, and what once crawled becomes something entirely different. And all from the outside, it looks like stillness. But from the inside, it's rearrangement. And if we're honest, that's the part we don't like. Because rearrangement feels like disorientation. feels like losing the shape we understood ourselves to have. It feels like not knowing what or who we are becoming. And not every in-between becomes beautiful, but very few of them leave us unchanged. Of course, this isn't only true for individuals. Throughout history, societies have found themselves between old stories and new ones not yet written. Communities, many of them live between repression and hope. In places we read about and in the headlines, in places that we'll never see, never know about. In our own nation, our immigrant neighbors wait in legal limbo, in between. In these political seasons, they feel heavy, they feel unresolved. So we each react differently to these in-betweens. Some feel energized and determined, others weary and afraid. And many of us feel all of that, all at once. But these collective in-between seasons, they're not signs that nothing is happening. They're signs that something is still unfolding. The question is not how fast it resolves, but how do we remain human within it? So how might we live in seasons like this? What might be happening inside our chrysalises? And I look around and I see for some, engagement looks like action and advocacy, giving, or simply showing up, even when we don't see the results, at least not on our timeline. And for others, it may be a time for rest, for study, or for listening. There's no single correct way to live any of these in-betweens. But holding steady matters. And above all else, we need to be gentle with ourselves and one another. We cannot sustain urgency forever. So faith, we lean into faith because it includes tending to one another and nurturing our own souls. Because that rearrangement that prepares us for what comes next, it requires energy. And we're going to need that. And that happens in congregations too, of course. In fact, much of the last year has felt uncertain. A 2-decade era making room for what comes next, not quite sure what that is. Familiar patterns fading while new ones are still emerging. Certainty giving way to discovery. Somewhere in between who we've been and who we're still becoming. Every congregation goes through that. This one has gone through a lot of them. At times, I imagine it may have felt uncertain, maybe even unstable. But then don't most in-betweens feel that way? Ask the teenagers. Yet through the winter, beneath the earth, life continues its quiet work of preparing for the spring. And inside the chrysalis, similar forces are rearranging the creature within. We, like them, are discerning the community we're becoming and our place in it. I wonder what you sense we are becoming. If you're like me, you don't know the final shape. And that's not only okay, that's the point. To learn to inhabit the questions faithfully. Although I've faced many in-between times in my life, the one that feels most poignant began a couple of years ago. I had let go of a career and community involvement that had grounded me for nearly 40 years. I even untethered myself from this community for a season to allow my spiritual and vocational selves to reorganize. And though I had a vague idea of what might be next, I didn't know, couldn't know. And man, did I want answers. Far quicker than the universe seemed to be willing to give them up. I call it my gap year. Not because I was off on a European jaunt to reward myself for finishing a degree, far from it. But because when I find myself stuck in a holding pattern, I like to choose something. It gives me agency to choose something about how I respond. There was much that was unresolved in my heart during that year. I held frustration, disappointment, even some anger. I was still working through grief for what I had left behind and anxiousness for what lay ahead, a probable relocation to a new city. The future might unfurl its wings beautifully, or it might not. I had to learn to let the answers go for a while. Answers that could not be given because I would not have been able to live them. As Rilke wrote to the young poet, I had to learn to live the questions. And even as that next step, the one that brought me to this pulpit for a time, has answered some of those questions, in-betweenness persists. We cross a threshold, enter a new phase, knowing there will be other thresholds ahead. That's life. Rearrangement is not the end of a story, it's the beginning of another. And in the in-between, we can't know what comes next. The chrysalis doesn't know that what lies within will fly. It only knows that it must remain. So I want to say there's nothing wrong with just being here, in this place, in this moment, together. There's nothing wrong with believing that what comes next may yet be beautiful. Not guaranteed, but possible. And what if it's okay that we still don't know what we're looking for? What if the real living, the real growing happens not in the answers, but inside the questions? Maybe the beauty is not what emerges, but in the honest, uncertain, sometimes hidden process of becoming that happens in the in-between. To hold the space where the questions live, to be the ones who stay when the old story is ended and the new one hasn't yet found its words. Let us remain. Let us tend. Let us stay human together.
Sherry will be leading us in the closing hymn, number 128, For All That Is Our Life. And we ask you to rise in body and spirit as you're able. And then as we move to the final verse, we will gently gather around the sanctuary and form a circle for our closing words.
leave this place, may we carry our questions gently, not rushing to solve them, but willing to live in them. And may we step into the days ahead ready to remain, to tend, to stay human together. Joanne, will you extinguish our chalice?